Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel, Sola Stories. I am 65 years old, and I went to the city to live with my son for my retirement. Every night, at 3 in the morning, he would take a shower. One time, my curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked. The scene in the bathroom terrified me so much that I moved into a retirement community the very next day. In the small town where I had lived my entire life, the late autumn wind carried the dry chill of early winter, piercing sharply into every corner of the house. My name is Eleanor, and at 65 years old, I had just officially said goodbye to the chalk dust of the high school lecture hall where I had taught for decades. This old craftsman-style house had witnessed almost my entire life, from an enthusiastic young teacher to a widow, and now to this old woman whose hair was streaked with the frost of time. On the mantelpiece, a photograph of my late husband still stood, solemn and imposing. Thinking of him stirred a complex feeling in my heart, a mixture of sorrow and a sense of a heavy burden lifted. People often say to speak no ill of the dead, but the invisible scars left on my soul by his beatings and harsh rebukes could never fade. He was a tyrannical, violent man who always treated our son and me as his private property. The day he found out he had terminal cancer was the same day our son, Julian, received his acceptance letter to a great state university. I suppressed all my grievances and resentment to care for him until he closed his eyes for the last time, not out of love, but out of duty, and to allow Julian to focus on his studies. The day my husband died, I didn't shed a single tear. I only felt the weight on my shoulders suddenly lighten. From that day on, my son and I had only each other. I poured all my love and energy into raising him, taking on odd jobs in addition to teaching to support his education. From a young age, Julian was bright and decisive, but also had a quick temper, perhaps a trait inherited from his father. Whenever I saw him frown and shout, an invisible fear would creep into my heart. I tried to use all of a mother's tenderness to correct and guide him, hoping to smooth out the sharp edges of his personality. In the end, Julian did not disappoint me. He graduated with honors and quickly found a good job in a major city, eventually getting promoted to regional manager for a well-known corporation. He married a wife, a gentle and kind girl named Clara. At last, the heavy burden on my shoulders was lifted. I thought that from then on, I would live a comfortable, carefree life, tending to my tomato plants in the morning and taking walks with the other older ladies in town in the evening. But life rarely goes as planned. That day, I was busy in my garden when the phone rang. It was Julian. "Hey, Mom, what are you doing?" His voice on the phone, even in a simple greeting, always carried a subtle sense of pressure. I wiped my dirt-stained hands on my apron and chuckled softly. "I'm just checking on the tomatoes. They're almost ready to be picked." "Is something wrong, son?" "Mom, Clara, and I have talked it over. I want you to get your things in order. This weekend, I'm driving down to pick you up and bring you to the city to live with us." I froze. The thought of leaving this place, of leaving the quiet life I knew so well, made my heart sink. "Oh, let's not, son. I'm used to living here. I don't know anyone there. I wouldn't be comfortable, and I'd just be a bother to you and your wife. You two have your jobs. You're so busy." "What bother, Mom?" Julian's tone held a hint of impatience. "It's a son's duty to take care of his mother. Besides, what if something happened to you out there all alone in the country? Who would even know?" "I've already made up my mind, so please don't argue. We've already prepared a room for you." His "I've already made up my mind" way of speaking sent a chill down my spine. It was exactly like my late husband, but I still tried to refuse gently. "Julian, honey, I know you care about me, but I'm really too old to change. I won't have any friends there, no garden. I'll be bored to death." "What do you mean, no friends? You'll come with us. Clara can take you out, take you shopping. Here, I'll let you talk to Clara." There was a moment of silence on the line, and then a clear, gentle voice came on, like a fresh spring flowing through the tense atmosphere. "Mom? It's Clara." "Oh, hello, dear." I softened my tone. "Mom, please come and live with us. The condo is spacious, and it will be so much livelier with you here. Julian is always worried about your health. He can't rest easy with you living all by yourself. You can come here. I'll take care of you. We can chat. It will be so nice, Mom." Clara's voice had a peculiar persuasiveness. Her warmth and kindness made it impossible to refuse. I knew this girl had a good heart, but I could still sense the compliance in her words. The decision had been Julian's, and she could only obey. I sighed, silent for a long moment. My mind was a battlefield. On one side was the freedom and peace I craved after so many storms. On the other was duty, my love for my son, and the fear that if I refused, Julian would fly into a rage. I was terrified of his anger. I had lived in a hell of anger before, and I did not want to face it again. All right then, I finally surrendered. Let me pack for a few days. Oh, wonderful! My husband will be there this weekend to pick you up. Clara's voice was filled with joy. After we hung up, I stood silently in my vegetable garden. Over the next few days, I began to pack. I didn't have much, a few old clothes, a faded photo album, and a couple of my favorite books. As I flipped through the pages of the album, looking at photos of Julian's bright smile as a child, my heart softened again. Maybe I was overthinking things. After all, he was my son, the boy I had raised with my own 2 hands. He was bringing me to live with him out of a sense of duty because he was worried about me. I should be happy. I packed up my past, half a lifetime of memories, and prepared for a new journey. I said goodbye to my neighbors, the old friends with whom I shared morning and evening chats. Everyone was happy for me, saying how lucky I was that my son was taking me to the city to be cared for in my old age. I just smiled, an incomplete smile. That weekend, Julian pulled up in a gleaming black luxury sedan. Seeing my son dressed in a tailored suit, looking every bit the successful man, a wave of indescribable pride washed over me. He bustled about, helping me with my things, constantly asking if I was comfortable. Clara had come with him, and the warm family atmosphere temporarily swept away my worries. "Mom, look, I bought you a few things." Julian opened the trunk, revealing several boxes of expensive vitamins and supplements. "Oh, you shouldn't have. Spending all this money. I don't need anything." I chided him lovingly. "I don't lack money, Mom, just time to take care of you. I can only work with peace of mind if you're living with us," he said, his tone sincere. The car started, leaving the small town, the old roof, and the familiar garden behind. On the wide highway, skyscrapers gradually rose before us like giants. The noisy, bustling atmosphere of the city left me feeling a little overwhelmed. Julian and Clara's condo was on the 18th floor of a high-end residential building. It was much larger than I had imagined, with gleaming hardwood floors and luxurious furniture that spoke of expense and opulence. Julian led me to a small but well-equipped room with a window overlooking a lush green park. "This is your room. I've had a TV and air conditioning installed for you. If you need anything, just tell Clara. Don't be a stranger." "It's wonderful, son. Thank you both so much." Clara skillfully helped me put my clothes into the closet. This girl was always like that, constantly busy, always with a gentle smile on her face. But I noticed that whenever Julian was near, her smile seemed a bit strained, and a flicker of caution and timidity would cross her eyes. The first dinner was held in a seemingly warm atmosphere. The meal was lavish, filled with all my favorite dishes. "Mom, eat more, you're too thin," Julian said, placing a large piece of fish in my bowl. "I can get it myself. You eat." "Clara, aren't you going to get Mom some more soup? What are you just sitting there for?" He turned to his wife. His voice wasn't loud, but it was filled with authority. Clara flinched and quickly ladled some soup for me. I saw her hand tremble slightly. I pretended not to notice and smiled at her. "Thank you, dear. The soup is delicious." Throughout the meal, it was mostly Julian who did the talking. He talked about work, about big projects, about the pressures of competition. He spoke of his achievements without any modesty, full of self-satisfaction. Clara and I just sat and listened, nodding occasionally. I suddenly realized my son was no longer the little boy who needed my protection. He had become a man of the world, a man with power, and he had brought that power home with him. That night, lying in the unfamiliar, soft bed, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The sounds of the city drifted in through the window, the distant blare of car horns, the faint murmur of people talking. Everything was new, and everything made me uneasy. I tried to soothe myself. "Everything will be fine. I just need time to adjust. During the first few days in my son's luxurious condo, I thought my worries had been for nothing. The new life wasn't as oppressive as I had imagined. On the contrary, it was filled with what seemed like sincere care. In the mornings, after Julian left for work, Clara would often accompany me to the farmer's market. She wouldn't let me carry a thing, always asking, "Mom, what do you feel like eating? I'll make it for you." She listened patiently to my scattered stories about my teaching career and my old students. Occasionally, she would take me to a large shopping mall and buy me a few new outfits, despite my repeated refusals. "Mom, that looks so elegant on you," she would praise, her smile gentle, her eyes clear. "Julian would be so happy to see you in it." Julian also played the part of a devoted son. Every evening when he returned from work, no matter how tired he was, he would first stop by my room to greet me. "Mom, how are you feeling today? Do you need me to buy you more supplements?" He bought me an electronic blood pressure monitor, instructing me carefully. "Mom, you need to measure it twice a day, once in the morning and once at night. Have Clara write it down in this notebook so I can check it." But this piece, it turned out, was just a thin veneer. It happened on a night at the end of the month, about 2 weeks after I had moved in. By then, the city had fallen asleep, with only the dim glow of streetlights filtering through the window frame. I was a light sleeper anyway, often tossing and turning until the middle of the night. When the clock on the wall struck 3 dry chimes, I was suddenly jolted awake by a sound that was familiar, yet occurring at a most unusual time. A rush of water. It was the sound of a shower, coming from the main bathroom, the one right next to my bedroom. The fierce, rushing water broke the profound silence of the night. Who would be taking a shower at 3 in the morning? I strained my ears, but there were no other sounds, only that rhythmic, lonely rush of water. Could Julian or Clara be sick and need to sponge off? A sliver of worry entered my heart. I wanted to open my door to check, but I was afraid of disturbing them. The sound of the water lasted for about 15 minutes, then stopped abruptly. The condo fell silent again. I couldn't get back to sleep that night. The next morning at breakfast, I tried to act as natural as possible. "Julian," I said, looking at my son, "were you not feeling well last night?" Around 3 in the morning, I heard someone taking a shower. Julian was reading the paper, his eyes never leaving the print. "Oh, it's nothing, Mom," he replied nonchalantly. "This new project has been really stressful. I've been feeling antsy and restless. I just got up to take a quick shower to cool off so I could get back to sleep." His explanation sounded reasonable, but just then, I saw Clara, who was bringing a bowl of oatmeal from the kitchen, freeze for a split second. The chopsticks in her hand almost slipped. She quickly regained her composure, placed the oatmeal on the table, and smiled, explaining for her husband. "Yes, Mom. He's been working so hard lately. He's been tossing and turning all night. Please don't worry." My daughter-in-law's fleeting moment of panic did not escape my notice. As a teacher with decades of experience, I was always sensitive to unusual expressions. Something was not right. But I didn't press the matter, just quietly finished my breakfast. I had thought it was a one-time thing, but I was wrong. 2 nights later, again at precisely 3 in the morning, the sound returned. It was the same sound of a faucet being wrenched open, followed by the rushing, rhythmic flow of water. This time, I felt an inexplicable chill. Taking a shower in the middle of the night due to stress was believable once, but for it to be repeated at the exact same time was no longer a coincidence. The following nights were spent waiting for that sound. As 3 in the morning approached, my heart would pound. Sometimes the water would turn on, and other times it would be terrifyingly silent. This unpredictable anomaly became a form of mental torture for me. My sleep became fragmented, and I was always in a state of half-slumber, my ears pricked for any sound. I began to pay closer attention to my son and daughter-in-law. During the day, Julian went to work as usual, acting normally, but I could occasionally see traces of exhaustion and irritability in his eyes. He was quicker to anger over small things. I tried to gently probe my daughter-in-law. "Clara, is something wrong? You haven't been looking well lately. Has Julian done anything to you?" She jumped, startled, and quickly waved her hands, avoiding my gaze. "No, nothing, Mom." I'm probably just not sleeping well. Julian is very good to me. Her words and her expression were in complete contradiction. I knew she was hiding something. A vague fear began to form in my mind, a fear connected to Julian and to those 3 in the morning showers. I couldn't bear it any longer and decided I had to have a frank talk with my son again. I chose a time after Clara had put the baby to bed, when it was just the 2 of us in the living room. "Julian, sit down. I need to talk to you," I said, gently patting the sofa beside me. He seemed surprised by my seriousness, but sat down. "What is it, Mom?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Son, listen to me. I know you're under a lot of stress at work, but you cannot continue this habit of showering at 3 in the morning. I've looked it up, and that's the time of night when the body's energy is at its lowest, and the temperature is coldest. Showering at that time is very dangerous. At best, you could catch a cold, but you could also have a stroke, or even suffer sudden cardiac death. You are young, with a bright future ahead of you. You have to learn to take care of your body." I said it all in one breath, filled with all of a mother's worry. I thought he would listen, or at least explain in more detail. But he didn't. Julian's face darkened, his usual patience vanished, replaced by undisguised irritation. "Mom, enjoy your retirement and stop meddling in my affairs." The door to his bedroom slammed shut with a bang, a final, definitive declaration that cut off all my attempts to show concern. Julian's cold rejection and the slamming door were like a bucket of ice water thrown in my face. From that day on, the atmosphere in the house was as heavy as lead. Julian barely spoke to me, avoiding my gaze and treating me like I was invisible. It was at that moment, when my focus shifted from the strange nightly sounds, that I began to pay closer attention to the other person in this silent tragedy, my daughter-in-law, Clara. One afternoon, we were chopping vegetables together in the kitchen. As Clara reached for a basket in an upper cabinet, the sleeve of her soft, 3/4 sleeve blouse slid down, revealing her fair wrist. And what I saw was a patch of purple and blue, mixed with faint yellow, clearly imprinted on her delicate skin. The shape of the bruise was odd, not like a normal bump, but more like the mark left by 5 fingers gripping with immense force. My heart skipped a beat. A feeling so familiar it was horrifying washed over me. I quickly grabbed her hand, my voice unable to hide my alarm. "My goodness, Clara, your wrist. What happened to your wrist?" Clara jumped as if she'd been electrocuted, yanking her hand back and hastily pulling down her sleeve to cover it. She was clearly flustered, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. It's nothing, Mom," she stammered. "Yesterday I was in a hurry and accidentally bumped into the corner of my desk. My skin is just thin. It bruises easily." She kept her head down, unable to look me in the eye. A clumsy lie. I had lived for nearly 70 years. As a former victim of domestic violence, I knew all too well the difference between a bruise from a fall and a bruise from being gripped. The marks on her wrist were the signature of an angry hand. My heart tightened. The shadow of my abusive husband suddenly reappeared before me. During his fits of rage, he would grab my arm and drag me, leaving the exact same marks. And just like Clara now, I used to lie to neighbors and friends with absurd excuses like falling down the stairs or bumping into a door. History was repeating itself in the most cruel way, right before my eyes, in my own son's home. I couldn't bring myself to expose her lie. I knew that once a victim chooses to hide, outside questioning only makes them retreat further into their shell of fear. I just said softly, "You need to be more careful next time. A woman must know how to protect herself." Clara just mumbled a quiet okay and then made an excuse to go to the bathroom. I watched her slender, lonely back as she walked away, my heart aching. My suspicions grew with each passing day. I began to see everything through a new filter, a filter of harsh reality. A few days later, I saw another sign. When she woke up in the morning, she kept her head down, avoiding conversation. When I called out to her, I saw that her eyes were red and swollen, clearly from a long night of crying. "Clara, what's wrong with your eyes?" I asked with concern. "Did you not sleep well?" This time, she seemed prepared with another lie. "Oh, I went out on the balcony for some fresh air last night, and a mosquito or some bug must have bitten my eyelid. It was so itchy. I rubbed it, and that's why it's swollen, Mom. A bug. On the 18th floor of a condo with screens on every window. The lies were becoming more and more ridiculous. And then there was the sound of the shower at 3 in the morning. The memory took me back again. After every beating, after every torment, my husband had a strange habit. He would go into the bathroom and rinse himself with cold water for a long time, as if trying to wash away his sin, to wash away the rage that had just erupted, as if the water could cleanse him of his inner demons, allowing him to wake up the next morning as if nothing had happened. The sound of water from the bathroom. This time, I didn't stay in bed. My heart was pounding so violently I could hear it in my ears. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I gently threw back the covers, my feet landing on the cold floor. Step by step, I made my way towards the bathroom without a sound. A lifetime as a teacher had taught me patience and caution, and I had never needed them more than at this moment. The hallway was pitch black, with only a faint sliver of light seeping from under the bathroom door. As I got closer, I heard more than just the water. I heard a suppressed gasp, a faint whimper, and my son's low, cold, threatening whisper. "Do you dare to talk back to me again?" "Huh?" My feet felt as if they were nailed to the floor. I had reached the bathroom door, and by some cruel twist of fate, it wasn't fully closed. A small crack remained, just wide enough for me to see inside. Trembling, I braced myself against the wall and slowly brought my eye to the crack. The scene inside crashed into my vision. My entire body went rigid. My breathing stopped. Under the harsh, white light of the bathroom, my son, Julian, was standing there. He wasn't undressed, he was still in his pajamas, but he was soaked to the bone. And in front of him, under the rushing stream of cold water from the shower head, was Clara. She too was fully clothed in her pajamas, drenched, her long hair plastered to her pale face. Julian had one hand tangled tightly in her hair, yanking her head back, forcing her to endure the icy torrent. His face, the face of the son I had raised, now wore the same cruel and cold rage I had seen on my husband's face countless times. He didn't shout. He just held his wife firmly, and with his other hand, he slapped her hard across her pale cheek. A sharp crack echoed over the sound of the water. Clara swayed, her body going limp, but her hair was still held tight. She didn't dare to cry out loud. Only a suppressed, desperate whimper escaped her throat. Her slender body shivered violently, from the cold and from fear. I said, "Will you ever talk back to me again?" Julian repeated, his voice squeezed through clenched teeth. My entire world collapsed. All my suspicions, all my vague fears, had now become a raw, terrifying, bloody reality right before my eyes. My first instinct was to burst in, to scream, to pull my son away, to protect Clara. But in that instant, an ice-cold current shot through my spine, locking every muscle in place. The scene before me blurred, overlapping with another memory, a dark memory I had buried for years. I no longer saw Julian and Clara. I saw my husband, his eyes red from drink, grabbing my hair and forcing my head into the rain barrel in the backyard. I heard his curses, felt the searing pain at the roots of my hair, the suffocating sensation of water rushing into my nose and mouth. I felt the absolute powerlessness of struggling in despair. That bone-deep terror, resurrected after more than a decade, was stronger than maternal love, more powerful than reason. It was a conditioned reflex. It roared in my head, "Run. Don't make a sound. Don't provoke him, or you'll be next." My body obeyed that command. My legs didn't rush forward. Instead, they instinctively backed away, turned, and ran. I ran back to my room in one breath, not daring to look back. I threw myself onto the bed and pulled the covers over my head, like a wounded animal seeking a hiding place. I lay there, trembling all over, biting my lip to keep from crying out. The water in the bathroom was still running, rhythmic and cruel, the background music to my family's tragedy, to my own cowardice. Then, the memories came flooding back, unstoppable. The hellish years of living with my abusive husband flashed before my eyes. The unprovoked beatings just because a meal wasn't to his liking or a word was said incorrectly. The long nights I held my own bruised body, crying silently, terrified my son in the next room would hear. The mornings I had to cover the bruises on my face with foundation. Before going to teach, having to lie to my colleagues that I had fallen off my bike. For over a decade, I lived like that, until the day he received his death sentence from the hospital. The day he died from his illness, I didn't cry. I only felt a sense of relief, as if a great weight had been lifted. I thought I was free, but I was wrong. The demon had not died with my husband. It had been resurrected, possessing the very son I cherished most. I had spent a lifetime trying to correct him, to teach him not to follow in his father's footsteps. But in the end, the violent blood still flowed in his veins. I had failed, completely and utterly. Tears began to stream down my face, no longer held back. I wasn't just crying for Clara. I was crying for my own tragic life, for a mother's powerlessness, for this cruel reality. I had escaped one cage, only to have indirectly pushed another woman into an identical one, a cage controlled by my own son. After a long time, the water stopped. The house fell silent again, but this silence was more terrifying than the noise. It was thick with guilt and unspoken pain. I knew that in the next room, my son was probably sleeping soundly after his cleansing, while my daughter-in-law was lying there, alone, licking her physical and spiritual wounds. I lay there, my tears dried, the fear passed, the pain settled, leaving only a bone-chilling clarity. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't change my son, and I didn't have the courage to confront him, to save Clara. I had fought that demon once in my life, and it had drained all my strength. I couldn't fight it again. Staying here, I would slowly wither away in guilt and fear. My only choice, the only way out for the rest of my life, was not this luxurious condo, but another place, a place where I could find peace, even if it was a lonely peace. The next day I had to leave, quietly and decisively. The night of terror gave way to an unusually clear and peaceful morning. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm and pure, a stark contrast to the festering darkness in my soul. I hadn't slept a wink, but my mind was exceptionally clear. The tears had run dry, and last night's extreme fear and pain seemed to have been distilled into a cold, firm resolve. I got out of bed, went to the bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. Before me was a 65-year-old woman, her hair white, her eyes sunken, her wrinkles etched with sorrow. But in those eyes, there was no longer submission or fear. It was the look of a person who had reached the depths of despair and found the only path to survival. I calmly prepared my last breakfast here. The dining table was set as usual, but the atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. I ate quietly, slowly, and deliberately. Then, I began to speak to my two children. "Julian, Clara," I began, my voice not trembling in the slightest. "I have something to say." Julian looked somewhat impatient. "What is it, Mom? Go ahead." I looked directly into my son's eyes, then turned to my daughter-in-law, who was staring at her plate, and said each word clearly. "I thought about it all night last night, and I've decided. I'm going to move into a retirement community." They were both stunned. Julian was the first to react, his calm facade shattering. He practically shouted, "You what? A retirement community? Why? Your son is right here. You want for nothing in this big house, and you want to move there? Do you want people to talk behind my back? I don't approve." His objection, I knew, stemmed not from love, but from pride and selfishness. He was afraid of public opinion, afraid of tarnishing his image as a successful, devoted son. Clara also looked up sharply, her wide eyes filled with panic and a hint of desperate pleading. She stammered, Mom, did we do something wrong to make you unhappy? Please don't go, Mom. Stay here with us. It's not your fault. This place is wonderful. But I've realized that city life just isn't for me. I want you two to have your privacy. Newlyweds need their own life, and it's inconvenient for me to be here. I paused, then continued, painting a false, bright picture. Besides, I've looked into it. The retirement communities these days are very nice, like little resorts. There are lots of friends, my own age, book clubs, chess clubs, and gardens I can tend to. I think I'll be happier with that kind of life. It's more suitable for an old woman like me. Julian continued to object vehemently, but his arguments only circled around losing face and being seen as irresponsible. I just listened in silence, letting him vent his anger. When he finished, I looked at him, my tone resolute. I have made up my mind. This is my life, and I want to spend my final years in my own way. There's no need to say any more. The unwavering determination in my eyes seemed to catch Julian by surprise. He was used to giving orders, to imposing his will. But today, he had hit a solid wall. He looked at me, then at Clara, and finally fell into a sullen silence. Clara began to cry, tears streaking her foundation. "Mom," I reached out and gently took her cold hand. "Hush now, child. Don't cry. You can come visit me on the weekends. That will be enough for me." That morning, I packed my own bags. It was just a few clothes and books, the same as when I arrived. Julian had already called and arranged for a room at a high-end retirement community on the outskirts of the city, perhaps to assuage his own guilt and to save face. As I walked to the door with my suitcase, I took one last look at the condo, a place of luxury and beauty, yet so cold and full of pain. I looked at my son, the child in whom I had placed all my hopes, now just a shell with a corrupted soul, which filled me with a deep, unknowable sadness. I looked at my daughter-in-law, frail and pale, hiding by the door, her eyes filled with despair. Life in the retirement community was so peaceful it felt almost unreal. There were no harsh words, no slamming doors, and most importantly, no sound of a rushing shower at 3 a.m. Every day passed in a predictable rhythm. Morning exercises, breakfast with new friends, reading in the library, and afternoon walks in the sun-drenched garden. I had found the physical safety I sought, but my soul was not at peace. Every time I closed my eyes at night, the image of Clara's drenched hair, her pale face, and her desperate eyes would flash in my mind, tormenting me. The sharp sound of my son's hand hitting his wife's face still echoed in my ears. The peace I had found here was bought with my daughter-in-law's suffering, which turned this place into a prison of guilt. I had saved myself, but I had abandoned another soul who was slowly sinking into hell. One afternoon, as I was sitting quietly on a stone bench in the garden, a familiar voice called out, "Excuse me, are you Eleanor, the English teacher?" I looked up and immediately recognized Margaret, a former colleague of mine who had retired a few years before me. She hadn't changed much, still with the same warm smile and bright eyes. This unexpected reunion eased some of my loneliness. We eagerly asked about each other's health, talked about our children, and reminisced about the old days. Just then, a young woman with a delicate face, but a deep sadness in her eyes walked over. "Mom, I brought you some fruit. This is my daughter Leah," Margaret introduced her. "Leah, say hello to Mrs. Eleanor." Looking at Leah, for a moment, I saw a reflection of Clara in her. The same submissive demeanor, the same forced smile trying to hide an inner exhaustion. After Leah said hello and left, Margaret sighed, watching her daughters retreating back with a look of heartache. Seeing my expression, Margaret seemed to guess something. "Eleanor, you look like you have a lot on your mind. Even here, you can't find peace, can you?" Her words were like a key, unlocking the emotional floodgates I had kept tightly shut. Guilt, fear, and a sense of sin all came pouring out. I told her everything, holding nothing back. I told her about my successful but brutal son, my pitiful daughter-in-law, the horrifying scene behind the bathroom door, and my own cowardice. Margaret just listened quietly. When I finished, there was no blame in her eyes, only compassion as she took my hand and patted it gently. "You've been through too much," she said, her voice full of sympathy. "Hearing your story reminds me of what happened with my Leah." Then, she began to tell me her daughter's story. Leah had also been in an abusive marriage. Her husband was an educated, seemingly gentle man, but he was a monster in private. "At first, I was just as clueless, my friend," Margaret said, shaking her head with regret. "I used to tell her, 'Honey, as a wife, you have to be patient with your husband. That's how you keep a family together.' I thought her patience would change him, but I was wrong, so terribly wrong." She explained that Leah's submissiveness only made her son-in-law more aggressive, progressing from verbal abuse to pushing and shoving, and then to full-blown beatings. One day, Margaret's voice broke. She came home with a black eye, but what froze me wasn't the bruise, it was her eyes. Her eyes then, my friend. They were no longer sad, no longer in pain. They were empty. They were the eyes of someone whose spirit had died. In that moment, I knew I couldn't keep being wrong. Tears streamed down her face. I cried, and I apologized to my daughter. I told her she had to get a divorce, that she had to escape that hell, no matter the cost. Leah's divorce was incredibly difficult. The husband constantly threatened her, terrorized her emotionally, saying he would ruin her family's reputation if she left him. But this time, with her mother by her side, Leah found her strength. Together they hired a lawyer, gathered evidence, and fought a grueling court battle. In the end, Leah was free. After hearing Margaret's story, I could only sit in silence. The parallels between Leah and Clara were heartbreakingly similar. Margaret looked me straight in the eye, her voice both sympathetic and powerfully motivating. "Eleanor, your daughter-in-law is likely in the same place my daughter was. Even though you are his mother, the one who carried him for 9 months, your daughter-in-law is someone else's child. She was loved and cherished by her own parents. Imagine how their hearts would break if they knew your son was abusing her like this. What parent in the world doesn't ache for their own child?" Every word from Margaret was like a knife in my heart. "I know, Margaret, I know all of it," I gasped. But maybe because of my own past, because I went through it myself, it left such a deep scar. I'm still so scared. The nightmare is still so vivid, like it happened yesterday. "I understand." Margaret squeezed my hand tighter. "And it's precisely because you know that pain better than anyone that you cannot let it continue." She looked at me, her gaze serious. "So, as the mother of a son who is abusing his wife, and as a woman who was once a victim herself, if you can no longer persuade your son, then you must help your daughter-in-law. Help her escape that hellish marriage. Help her get out." Margaret's words echoed in my mind. I had run away to find my own peace, but true peace isn't the safety of hiding in a shell. It's the peace of the soul, and my soul would never be at peace if I knew I had abandoned someone who needed help. I was wrong. I thought I was powerless. I couldn't confront my son head-on, but I could be Clara's ally, a silent source of support. I didn't have the strength to fight, but I could put the weapon in her hand and show her the way. A new decision, one far more powerful than the decision to leave, formed in my heart. I looked at Margaret and nodded resolutely. "Thank you. I know what I have to do." After talking with Margaret, it was as if I had woken from a dream. For the next few days, I planned my strategy, considering the advice a lawyer had given me. My heart was no longer heavy with cowardice, but filled with a calm determination, waiting for the right moment. And that moment came sooner than I expected. A week after I moved into the retirement community, Clara came to visit me. She carried a large basket of expensive fruit, her face still wearing that gentle yet strained smile. "Mom?" she said, her voice tinged with apology. "I'm so sorry, things have been so busy at home. This is the first chance I've had to come see you." I looked at my daughter-in-law. She tried to hide her fatigue with makeup, but the exhaustion in her eyes was unmistakable. As she got closer, in the daylight, I could clearly see a faint, yellowish-blue bruise near her hairline. My heart clenched. My son had done it again. I led her to the stone bench in the garden where I had spoken with Margaret. I let her talk about trivial things at home, listening patiently, but I knew I couldn't wait any longer. When her conversation trailed off, I took a deep breath, looked her directly in the eye, and said, my voice not harsh, but filled with infinite sadness, "Clara, the bruise on your forehead. Did you bump into something again?" Clara flinched, instinctively reaching up to touch her forehead. The panic on her face was palpable. No, I didn't let her invent another lie. I took her cold, thin hands in mine. "Don't lie to me anymore, Clara. I know everything." Clara's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. "Mom, what are you saying? What do you know?" "The night I decided to leave," I said slowly, each word a hammer blow. "I saw. In the bathroom. I saw everything." Clara's face went white as a sheet. She began to tremble, but then, like a deep-seated conditioned reflex, she rushed to deny it. "No, that's not it, Mom. You must have seen wrong. You must have. Julian, he just has a short temper. He gets like that when he's stressed from work. But he loves me and the baby. Don't think so badly of him. He's miserable too, Mom. She cried as she spoke, her words defending her abuser sounding so pitiful. Looking at her, I saw myself 30 years ago. I didn't interrupt, just let her finish. When her faint defense trailed off, I pulled her close and wrapped my arms around her thin shoulders. Stop lying to me, and stop lying to yourself, my child. My voice broke. The things you just said. I said them myself for almost 20 years. I also used to say the bruises on my body were from my own carelessness. But you and I, we both know that's not the truth, don't we? It was this empathy, coming from a fellow victim, that completely shattered Clara's last line of defense. She couldn't hold it together anymore. She buried her head in my shoulder and began to sob, not the suppressed whimpers of before, but a raw, gut-wrenching cry, releasing years of pent-up pain, humiliation, and resentment. I just held her quietly, letting her cry it all out. When her sobs finally subsided into sniffles, she began to talk. And the truth she revealed was even more horrifying than I had imagined. He hits me often, Mom, she said, her voice a thin whisper, for no reason. Sometimes just because the soup is a little too salty, sometimes just because he lost a contract at work. He takes all his frustration out on me. She choked back a sob. He humiliates me, calls me a freeloader, a waste of space. He even called me a barren hen, saying our family had the worst luck to have married me. Clara looked up at me with tear-filled eyes, full of regret. You know, Mom, before I married Julian, I was a respected teacher at a prestigious private school. I loved my job. But back then, he said something to me, and I believed him. What did he say? He said, "Quit your job. I'll take care of you. Why should a woman work so hard? Just stay home and be a good wife and mother." I believed his promise. I gave up my career, my dreams, and dedicated myself to this family. But I never imagined that "I'll take care of you" was actually a life sentence, turning me into a dependent with no voice, someone he could trample on at will. She had tried many times to go back to work, to regain her independence. But every time she brought it up, Julian would fly into a rage, hit her, lock her in the house, and smash her phone. She was completely isolated. Then why? Why didn't you divorce him? I asked the question to which I already knew the answer. Clara shook her head in despair. I've thought about it so many times, Mom. But he won't allow it. He threatened me. He said if I dared to bring it up, he would make life hell for me and my family. He said that since I haven't worked in years and have no income, I have nothing. If we divorced, I would leave with nothing, and the court would never side with me. He said I would live a miserable life and would never get back on my feet. Hearing this, I squeezed her hand tightly. My son's cruelty and cunning had far surpassed his father's. He was not only a physical abuser, but a psychological one, using every means to bind, control, and gradually destroy his wife's life. I waited for Clara to finish crying and helped her dry her tears. I looked her straight in the eye, my voice no longer that of a mother-in-law, but an ally. Don't be afraid, child. I am here. I will not leave you alone in that hell. You are not alone, I continued, my tone incredibly firm, and you will not leave with nothing. Clara looked at me, her eyes still clouded with doubt and fear. It was then that I revealed my plan. I've already spoken to a lawyer. These few words were like a shot of adrenaline, causing a flicker of light to appear in Clara's empty eyes. For the first time in a long time, I saw a glimmer of hope. We will fight this together, I said, quietly and smartly. My son turned you into a victim. Now, we will use that to build the case against him. Seeing my daughter-in-law break down in my arms, her thin body trembling with suppressed sobs, I truly understood my own weakness. I had thought of myself as a victim, with the right to run away and seek peace. But I was wrong. When I witnessed the same tragedy destroying another life, my silence was complicity. My departure was not liberation, but a cruel abandonment. I am so sorry, Clara, I whispered, my voice hoarse with emotion. I should have noticed sooner. I should have been stronger. Not just for myself, but for you. Clara shook her head but said nothing, just clung to my sleeve like a child who had found her only lifeline. I knew apologies were meaningless now. What this child needed was not sympathy, but a way out, a concrete plan. I waited for her to calm down, and then, word by word, with a resolve I had never felt before, I said, "Child, listen to me. This battle won't be easy, but you are not alone. From this moment on, I will be on your side, and I will see you through to the end. We are going to make him pay for everything he's done." It was the first time I had referred to my son so coldly as him. In my heart, Julian was no longer my beloved son, but a criminal who needed to be brought to justice. "But I'm so scared, Mom," Clara whispered. "He'll never let me go." "That's because before, you were alone," I said with certainty. "Now you have me, and more importantly, we have the law." I went to see Mr. Liu. At the mention of Mr. Liu's name, Clara's eyes widened in surprise. Mr. Liu is an old classmate of mine, a very righteous man, and the best divorce attorney in this city. He gave me a plan. Now, we are going to go over it together. You must remain completely calm and do exactly as I say, do you understand? And so, in a quiet corner of the retirement community's garden, two women, one old and one young, both victims of domestic violence, plotted their counterattack. According to Mr. Liu, the most important thing right now is to gather evidence, I explained. Your words in court can be denied, but evidence cannot. Do you understand? Evidence. First, from now on, whenever he verbally abuses or threatens you, find a way to secretly record it on your phone. Just keep your phone in your pocket with the recording app already running. Second, every time he lays a hand on you, even if it's just a slap or a small bruise, you must immediately go to the bathroom, lock the door, and take a picture of the injury. Send those pictures to a secret email address that only you and I know. Third, start keeping a diary. Document every single abusive word and action, every single day. And finally, and this is very important, you must try to find and photograph all documents related to his finances and income, employment contracts, bank statements, property deeds, anything you can find. This is to counter his threat of leaving you with nothing. Clara's face turned pale. "What if he finds out?" "I know this is dangerous," Mom said, "but freedom is never free. You have to be brave, just this one time." My words seemed to strike a chord deep inside her. She nodded, her expression shifting from fear to determination. "There's one last step," I said. "After we have enough evidence, you must be the one to formally ask for a divorce." Clara trembled. "He'll kill me. He'll go insane." "I know. But that is when he is most likely to reveal his true, monstrous nature. You don't have to confront him. You just have to say the words, and then do whatever it takes to get out of that house immediately. Run to a friend's place, or take a cab straight here to me. Mr. Liu and I will handle the rest. We will use his rage against him in court." That afternoon when Clara left, she still looked afraid, but she was no longer desperate. There was purpose in her step, a plan in her eyes. She was transforming from a passive victim into a reluctant warrior, returning to the lion's den to gather weapons for the final battle of her life. The following days were the longest of my life. I lived in a state of constant anxiety, my phone always in my hand. Every email from Clara's secret account made my heart clench. A photo of a bruised arm, an audio file of Julian screaming the most vile insults at his wife, a short diary entry. "He hit me again today, because I accidentally broke a bowl." Each piece of evidence was a knife in my heart, but it was also a brick paving the road to my daughter-in-law's freedom. I forwarded everything to Mr. Liu. He said we already had more than enough to win the case. We just needed one last thing, for Clara to officially ask for a divorce, to light the final fuse. After nearly 2 weeks of evidence gathering, the day finally came. In the morning, I received a text message from Clara. "Mom, I'm going to tell him tonight." That day, I couldn't sit still. I prayed for her safety. By evening, my heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. I stared at my phone, waiting. Around 10 o'clock at night, my phone rang. It was Clara's number. I snatched it up. "Hello? Clara? How are you?" "Mom," the voice on the other end was trembling and frantic. I told him." "What did he do? Did he do anything to you?" He. Clara's words were cut off by a scream, followed by Julian's furious roar. Who do you think you're calling? Give me the phone. Then came the sound of something smashing, and the line went dead. Clara? Clara. I yelled desperately into the phone, but was met with only a cold, dead tone. My hands and feet went numb. Cold sweat dripped down my back. I knew something had happened. I redialed again and again, dozens of times, but no one answered. I imagined the horrifying scene unfolding in that condo, the scene I had witnessed once before. My son, the monster in human skin, was torturing his wife. About half an hour later, my phone rang again. This time, it was from Julian's number. I answered with a trembling hand. Hello? Mom? The voice on the other end was ice cold, filled with rage and menace. What have you been telling her? Who gave you the right to incite my wife to cause trouble? Are you trying to tear my family apart? Julian, what are you doing? You can't hurt Clara. He let out a cold laugh. Hurt her? I'm just teaching my wife a lesson. I've given her a lesson she'll never forget. Let's see if she ever dares to mention divorce again. Then his voice turned cruel. And you listen to me. From this day on, I won't let her take a single step out of this house, and she will never see you again. You just stay put in that retirement home. With that, he hung up. I was stunned. The plan had failed at the most critical step. Not only had Clara not escaped, but she had been brutally beaten and was now being held captive. All contact was cut off. She was in mortal danger. I was truly panicked. I immediately dialed Mr. Liu's number. Mr. Liu, something's happened. My voice was shaking. My son, he found out. He hit the girl, and he's locked her in the room. We have to do something. We have to get her out, now. The fight for Clara's freedom had entered its most difficult and dangerous phase. This was no longer a legal battle on paper, but a real-life rescue mission. After that terrifying phone call with Julian, Mr. Liu and I took immediate action. We reported him to the police for domestic violence and unlawful imprisonment. With official intervention, my son was forced to open the door, and they rescued a terrified Clara, her body covered in fresh bruises. She was taken to the hospital to have her injuries documented, and Mr. Liu arranged for her to stay in a safe, temporary location. The plan was exposed. The war had moved from the shadows into the open. I knew it was only a matter of time before Julian came looking for me. Sure enough, 2 days later, he appeared at the retirement community. He had lost his usual calm and composed demeanor. Though still dressed in an expensive suit, his face was haggard, and his eyes were bloodshot from rage and lack of sleep. He looked like a cornered animal. He stormed up to me as I was reading in the garden, not even bothering with a greeting, his voice dripping with accusation. Mom, what are you doing? You're this old, and you still want to stir up trouble? My family's happiness, my happiness, how could you bear to destroy it with your own hands? I calmly closed my book and set it aside. The fear inside me was gone, replaced by a cold disappointment. Happiness? I looked him straight in the eye. You call the hell you created for Clara happiness? You call your fists and your insults happiness? Don't you dare use that word. You don't deserve it. That's my private family business, he roared, causing a few people nearby to turn and stare. I was teaching my wife a lesson. You have to keep a woman in her place, or she'll get out of control and walk all over you. You're a woman. You should have understood and taught your daughter-in-law her place. Instead, you incited her to make trouble. Hearing those words, I knew my son was beyond saving. His father's toxic, misogynistic ideology had seeped deep into his bones, becoming even more twisted and cunning. You're wrong, Julian, my tone was firm. Violence isn't discipline. It's a crime. Controlling and trampling on someone isn't how you maintain happiness. It's a sign of weakness and sickness. I have been silent for too long. If you can feel any remorse now, if you can recognize your mistakes and go ask for Clara's forgiveness, maybe things can still be saved. Change before it's too late. I gave him one last chance, a faint hope that some humanity remained in him. But he scoffed at it. He let out a bitter laugh. Change? What mistakes have I made that I need to change? I'm successful. I make money. I gave her a life of luxury. All she had to do was stay home, have children, and obey. It was you, helping her behind my back, Who gave her these delusions? You ruined everything. Our argument grew louder. I no longer held back. The one who ruined everything is you. It was your brutality that killed Clara's love. It was your selfishness that pushed this family to the brink of a cliff. Fine. Just fine, he seethed, his eyes wide with fury. Since you've chosen to side with an outsider against your own son, then you listen to me. He pointed a finger at my face, his voice sharp as a knife. If you continue to help her, if you agree to this divorce, then from this day forward, the bond between us as mother and son is severed. From now on, I will consider myself as not having a mother. My heart ached as if it were being squeezed in a vice, but I didn't back down. I had already lost my son the night I saw him torturing his wife. The person standing before me now was just a stranger wearing my son's face. Fine, I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. If that is what you wish, and don't think a divorce will be that easy, he spat. I will never agree to it. I'll hire the best lawyers. I'll prove to the court that she's mentally ill, incompetent. She won't get a single penny, and she can forget about ever getting custody of any child. With that, he turned and stormed off, leaving me alone in the curious and sympathetic gazes of the people around me. I knew the real war had just begun. The legal battle unfolded exactly as Julian had threatened. He spared no expense, hiring a team of shrewd, aggressive lawyers who specialized in twisting the truth. Every piece of evidence we presented, they countered. The audio recordings, they claimed, were edited or were just normal arguments between a married couple. The photos of the bruises, they argued, could have been self-inflicted by Clara to frame her husband. The medical report documenting her injuries, they said, was the result of a fall. They even submitted a falsified medical record signed by some unscrupulous doctor, attesting that Clara suffered from a psychological disorder with a history of self-harm and persecutory delusions, causing her to fantasize about being abused. Everything slowly ground to a stalemate. Clara, after the trauma of being held captive and her husband's shameless tactics in court, was on the verge of a breakdown. She began to doubt herself, terrified she would actually lose the case, and just as her husband had threatened, lose her child and be left with nothing. The flame of hope we had just kindled was slowly being extinguished. I was frantic with worry, but could only comfort her and trust in Mr. Liu. Just as the case was about to be dismissed for lack of evidence, a miracle happened. One afternoon, as I was sitting lost in thought in my room, the phone suddenly rang. It was Clara, but her voice was no longer weary or desperate. It was clear, urgent, and punctuated with joyful sobs. "Mom! Mom! I have good news! Mom! We have hope!" "What is it, child? Tell me slowly." "The neighbors, Mom. It was the neighbors," she cried and laughed at the same time. "The residents in the building across from ours, they just installed a new high-resolution security system. They got it for security. But they never expected one of the cameras would be pointed directly at the hallway on our 18th floor. My heart began to pound. "What are you saying?" The night he locked me in, Clara's voice trembled with excitement. He dragged me out into the hallway and hit me and screamed at me. That scene, the camera recorded the entire thing. Crystal clear. The neighbor just reviewed the footage today and recognized us. I've already called Mr. Priest. Liu. Mom, I was speechless. A current of electricity ran through my entire body. It was divine providence, a piece of undeniable, unforgeable evidence that took place in a public space. Mr. Liu acted immediately. That video was like an atomic bomb dropped on the courtroom. In the footage, Julian's true nature was laid bare for all to see. His grabbing of her hair, the slaps, and the vicious threats he hurled at a defenseless woman. Faced with this irrefutable proof, Julian's legal team could no longer deny the abuse. The civil case was now at risk of becoming a criminal one. To keep their client out of jail, they had no choice but to advise Julian to accept a settlement and agree to all of our terms. Finally, the court's judgment came down. Clara's hellish marriage was officially over. Not only did she receive half of their shared assets, but based on the proven physical and psychological damages, she was also awarded a very significant sum in compensation. The day she received the divorce decree, Clara cried, but they were tears of liberation. Clara's life had turned a new page. With the assets and compensation she received, she bought a small, elegant condo in another part of the city and personally decorated it to be a real home. It was no longer a cold, gilded cage, but a space filled with sunlight and hope. On the first day she moved into her new home, the first person she came to pick up was me. Seeing my daughter-in-law's radiant smile, her clear eyes free of fear, I felt that all my efforts and worries had been worth it. "Mom, thank you," she said, hugging me tightly. "If it weren't for you, I might never have escaped." "Don't say that," I said, stroking her hair. "It's because you were brave enough. You saved yourself." We sat in her new condo, drinking tea together. Suddenly, Clara looked at me, her cheeks slightly flushed, a little shy, but her eyes sparkling with happiness. "Mom, I have some more good news to tell you." "What good news?" She placed a hand on her stomach, her voice soft. "After the divorce, I kept feeling unwell. I went for a checkup and found out I'm more than 2 months pregnant. I guess it was fate taking pity on us." "Mom," I was stunned, and then overwhelmed with immense joy. The woman who had been called a barren hen for so many years, the moment she escaped that abusive man, a new life began. It was the most precious gift, the sweetest reward for all she had endured. News of Clara's pregnancy somehow reached Julian. He tried every way to get in touch, first with Clara, then with me. He was filled with regret. He begged, "Mom, give me one last chance. I know I was wrong. I was a monster. Please, talk to Clara for me. Let me come back and take care of her and my child. I swear I'll change." Before I hung up and blocked his number, I said only one thing to him. "The night you imprisoned and beat a woman who was carrying your child, your chances ran out. You are not worthy." Clara's answer was the same. The scars on her heart were too deep. She could not forgive, could not trust such a cruel and heartless man ever again. Our lives, as a mother and daughter-in-law, continued peacefully. I often visited Clara's home, where we would cook together, take walks, and shop for the coming baby. One day, she took my hand, her gaze sincere. "Mom, my own mother passed away a long time ago. You gave me a new life. Would you adopt me as your daughter? That way, your future grandchild will have both a grandma and a maternal grandmother." I couldn't help but let the tears fall. I had lost a biological son, but heaven had blessed me with a devoted daughter and a grandchild on the way. Yes, I nodded through my tears. I would love that. I didn't move back in with her. I stayed at the retirement community where I had my friends. But her condo became my second home, a true home, not built with money or pretense, but with love, understanding, and courage. My life had been through a tremendous storm, and now, on the downward slope of my years, I had found true peace. Thank you for watching. I hope today's story has resonated with you. For those who have not yet subscribed, please don't forget to click subscribe so we can accompany you every day. Let's grow together. We'll see you in the next video.